Hi everyone, welcome to Channel Up. My name is Angelo, and here I'm going to be digesting deep, thought-provoking documentaries on crime, justice, and some of the world's most controversial cases. Now, the death penalty is one of the most debated issues in modern justice. Some people see it as the ultimate punishment for heinous crimes, while others argue that no system is perfect enough to decide life and death. Regardless of where you stand, every execution carries a story of victims, of criminals, and of the irreversible weight of justice. In 2025, several individuals across the United States will face execution for crimes that shook their communities. Today, we take an in-depth look at these individuals, their crimes, trials, and the final moments leading up to their execution. We'll start from January 2025 and the list of people to be executed or who have been executed in January 2025. Now, first on the list is Marion Bowman. He was executed on January 31st, 2025. Now, his crime location is South Carolina. He was imprisoned in Broad River Correctional Institution in Columbia, South Carolina. His execution site was still South Carolina and under the Department of Corrections. Now, on February 16th, 2002, Marion Bowman retrieved a gun and later confronted one Miss Candy Martin over an alleged death, threatening to kill her. The night he lured her into a car, picked up his intoxicated accomplice, one Mr. Taiwan Gadsden, and later led Candy into the woods, shooting her multiple times, despite her pleas for mercy. He then attempted to sell her car before returning to hide her body in the trunk and setting it on fire. Authorities traced the murder weapon back to Bowman, leading to his arrest. A jury sentenced him to death for Miss Candy's murder. He was executed by lethal injection on January 31st, 2025. Now let's look at the executions in February 2025. First on the list is one Mr. Steven Nelson, executed on February 5th, 2025 from Texas. Crime location, Arlington, Texas. He was imprisoned in Alan B. Polonsky Unit, Livingston, still in Texas. Now, the story of Stevenson is so tricky. Stevenson Nelson was sentenced to death for the 2011 murder of one Pastor Clint Dobson at North Point Baptist Church in Arlington, Texas. Nelson strangled Pastor Dobson to death during a robbery, leaving church secretary one Judy Elliott for dead. She survived but suffered permanent brain damage. His criminal record, including prior violent offenses, and despite multiple appeals for mercy, the courts and the jury upheld his sentence. His execution was scheduled for February 5th, 2025. Next on the list is Demetrius Frazier from Alabama. His crime location is Fountain Heights Apartment Complex, Alabama. He was imprisoned in Holman Correctional Facility, Atmore, in Alabama. Now, this is another tricky story, but don't forget, no matter how tricky your story is, ignorance can never be an excuse to the law. In the early morning of November 26, 1991, Mr. Demetrius Frazier broke into an apartment intending to rob it. After stealing a small sum of money, he entered a bedroom where one Miss Pauline Brown was asleep. At gunpoint, he forced her to hand over more cash before committing further violent acts. When she pleaded for her life, he silenced her with a fatal gunshot. Frazier briefly fled, then returned to confirm if she was dead. Before searching the apartment again, he later discarded the murder weapon. After being convicted of similar crimes in Michigan, he was sentenced to death in Alabama for Miss Pauline's murder. His execution was carried out on the 25th day of January. James Ford, February 20th, 2025. His crime location is South Florida, in South Sam, Charlotte County, Florida. He was imprisoned in Union Correctional Institution, still in Rayford, Florida. On April 6, 1997, one Mr. James Ford lured one Mr. Greg and Kimberly Mallory, along with their 22-month-old daughter, Miranda, to a fishing trip at the sod farm where he worked. Once there, he ambushed Greg, shooting him in the head before brutally attacking him with a sharp weapon and slitting his throat in the process. Kimberly attempted to flee with their child but was caught. Ford then assaulted her before ending her life with a gunshot. Their bodies were discovered the next day with baby Miranda found alive but suffering from mosquito bites and dehydration. DNA evidence linked Ford to the crime, leading to his conviction and death sentence. His execution took place on February 20th, 2025. Richard Tabler was arrested in Killeen, Texas, and imprisoned in Allambie Polonsky Unit, Livingston, still in Texas. Now, for Richard Tabler, he was convicted of killing 4 people linked to organized crime in Killeen, Texas. In 2004, he lured 2 nightclub owners, one Mr. Haitham Zaid and Mohammed Amin Chabani, to a meeting before executing them. Days later, he kills 2 young men, one Mr. Jeremy and Kai Cooley, these 2 people whom he believed were informants. Tabler later taunted his victims and their families through letters from prison. His execution was scheduled for February 13, 2025, and it has long been carried out. Now let's move over to the executions scheduled for March 2025. First on the list is one Mr. Brad Sigmund, scheduled for 7th March 2025. Wow. His crime location is Greenville, South Carolina. He was imprisoned by the Department of Corrections, Columbia, in South Carolina. Brad Sigmund was convicted for the gruesome 2001 murders of David and Gladys Lack, the parents of his ex-girlfriend. In a fit of rage, he attacks them with a hammer, killing them instantly. His ex-girlfriend, one Miss Laura Lack, managed to escape and testified against him. Sigmund's appeal failed and his execution is scheduled for March 7, 2025. Next is one Mr. David Wood, scheduled to be executed on March 13, 2025. Crime location is El Paso, Texas. He was imprisoned in Allambie Polonsky Unit, Livingston, still in Texas. His execution site is supposed to be Huntsville Unit in Huntsville, Texas. Now, David Wood, a convicted serial killer, was responsible for the deaths of at least 6 women in El Paso, in Texas, between 1987 and 1990. His crimes remained unsolved for years until forensic evidence linked him to the murders. His execution is scheduled for 13th March 2025. Next on the list is one Mr. Christopher Sepulvado. His crime location is Mansfield in Louisiana, and he was imprisoned in Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, Louisiana. His execution site is supposed to be Louisiana State Penitentiary, still in Angola, Louisiana. Now, Mr. Christopher Sepulvado was convicted for the brutal murder of his 6-year-old stepson, one Master Wesley Mesa, in 1992. He severely beat and scalded the boy with boiling water, leading to his death. His case remains one of the most horrifying instances of child abuse in Louisiana's history. His execution is scheduled for March 17, 2025. Next on the list is Jesse Hoffman, scheduled to be executed on March 18, 2025 in Louisiana. His crime location is New Orleans, Louisiana, and he's presently in Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, Louisiana. Jesse Hoffman was sentenced to death for the 1996 rape and murder of one 29-year-old Mary Williams in New Orleans. He abducted her at gunpoint, drove her to a secluded area, and shot her execution style. His final appeal was denied, and his execution is set for March 18, 2025. Next is Stanley Adams, scheduled to be executed on February 16, 2028 in Ohio. His crime location is Columbus, Ohio, and he was imprisoned in the Chillicothe Correctional Institution, still in Ohio. On October 11, 1999, Stanley Adams attended a party, left to get money, and later returned covered in blood, with cash in his pocket. That night, he broke into a home of one Miss Esther and Ashley Cook. Esther was found at the bottom of the stairs, having died from blunt force trauma. Miss Ashley was found in an upstairs bedroom and had been assaulted and strangled. DNA evidence linked Adams to the crime. Police later stopped him for a traffic violation and noticed his clothes were soaked in blood. He was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to death. Adams also received a life sentence for the August 1999 murder of one Miss Rosalind Taylor. His execution is scheduled for February 16, 2028. Though Ohio's execution drug shortages have caused frequent delays, but it will still happen anyways. Next on the list is Mr. Aaron Grunches. Crime location is Mesa in Arizona, and he's presently under the authority of the Central Unit Arizona State Prison Complex, Florence in Arizona. Aaron Grunches, 51 years, is scheduled for execution on March 19, 2025 at 6 p.m. local time for the murder of one Mr. Ted Price in December 2002. Grunches had previously served time for drug paraphernalia charges. In November 2002, Grunches drove Ted to a secluded desert area where he shot and killed him. Afterward, Grunches disposed of Ted's belongings with the help of a witness. Ted's body was found days later. Grunches was also involved in the shooting of a police officer, Robert Flannery, in January 2003. He was arrested and later pled guilty to both crimes, receiving a death sentence in return. His execution was previously delayed in 2023 due to a review of Arizona's execution protocols, but is now set for March 2025. Next is Wendell Grissom. Wendell Grissom is awaiting new execution date in Oklahoma. His crime location is Watonga in Oklahoma, and he is presently under the authority of Oklahoma State Penitentiary, McAlester, Oklahoma. Wendell Grissom, 55 years old, is awaiting a new execution date after his original one was stayed. He was convicted of murdering one Miss Amber Matthews in November 2005 in Watonga, Oklahoma. Grissom and his accomplice, Jesse Jones, shot Amber and injured one Drew Kopp. Amber later died from her injuries. Grissom had a history of brain injuries, alcohol abuse, and depression. He was arrested after fleeing the scene. Grissom was sentenced to death in 2008. His execution has been delayed due to understaffing in Oklahoma's Department of Corrections. Next is Mr. John Drummond. John Drummond is an inmate on the death row at the Ohio State Penitentiary in Youngstown, Ohio, and is scheduled for execution on April 16, 2025. Drummond was convicted for the 2003 shooting that killed one baby Jean Dent in Youngstown, Ohio. He and his friend Wayne Gilliam fired into the Dent family home, with Drummond later admitting he didn't intend to kill the baby. Drummond was arrested and convicted for murder. In 2013, he was also convicted of the 1997 murder of Ronald Maceo, receiving a life sentence in return. Next is James Galen Hanna, a 72-year-old inmate at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility, and is scheduled for execution on May 14, 2025. Hanna was convicted of the 1997 murder of his cellmate Peter Corpus at Lebanon Correctional Institution. After a conflict with Corpus over stolen property, Hanna attacked him with a sharpened paintbrush and later struck him with a lock. Corpus initially survived but died weeks later from a head injury. Hanna was sentenced to death after confessing to the crime. This is not his first execution date, as his execution has been postponed multiple times due to Ohio's challenges with execution drugs. Other people in this death row list include one Mr. Percy Houghton. Percy Houghton is from Ohio and is scheduled to be executed on June 21st, 2028. Then one Mr. Samuel Morland from Ohio, scheduled for July 19th, 2028. Then we have one Douglas Coley from Ohio, scheduled to be executed on August 15th, 2028. Then we have one Timothy Coleman from Ohio, scheduled for November 2025. Then we have finally one Karim Jackson from Ohio, rescheduled to be executed in December 2025. These names represent crimes that shook communities and devastated families. Their executions reignite discussions on justice, morality, and whether capital punishment serves as a deterrent or simply a cycle of vengeance. Where do you stand on the death penalty? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this documentary insightful, why don't you subscribe to Channel Up for more in-depth crime reports? Stay informed, stay aware, and as always, keep questioning the world around you. Don't forget, I'll be back with more updates on various fields. Peace out.